Hello, duetting friends and fellow adventurers. I am super excited about today's video. I was doing my morning journaling and I don't know, all the pieces just came together. So this video is answering the question how to start your adventures in Azuria. And it's based on a question that I have received a lot, and thank you to those of you who reach out with your questions and are curious about Azuria, and or even just the people who are encouraging and thoughtful and want Jonathan and I to know how much you like what it is that we're creating. So wherever you fall into that camp, or if you're just kind of happening by along the interwebs, I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome. So Azuria is the homebrew world that Jonathan created for me for our duet campaign. And so in this video, I want to talk to you about how you can start your own duet adventure in Azuria, especially if you aren't sure that you want to start the Land of Vampires adventure. But this video, if you are starting the Land of Vampires adventure, this video will give you some context around what's happening more broadly in Azuria at the time of the Land of Vampires adventure starting. So what's going on between Linolynn and Hadvar. And I'll have a link in the video, I'll have a link in the show notes for how you can look at a map of Azuria and see the different places that I'm talking about, or I'll get Jonathan to teach me how to make the video fancy so you can see Azuria on the thing. I would point, but I don't know how to do that myself yet. So I'm going to assume that you can look at a map and find the places. But this is more about the broader context around Azuria and how to start your duet adventure there. So if you are wanting to start an adventure in Azuria that is not a duet adventure, I think that this historical context will still work for you really well. But I'm assuming that probably you're here because you're wanting to run a duet adventure, or maybe a trio adventure, so a small party adventure versus a wide sweeping campaign. But anyone is welcome in Azuria. Okay. So, sorry. I had to come first thing to record the video because I was so excited, so I'm still morning coffeeing. Okay. I've just put up a post on worldofazuria.com about the history of Azuria, the general overview. But I want to talk about actually how our duet campaign got started. And that way, I think that that's actually a really great way to start an adventure in Azuria. If you want to re-encounter the story with some changes, but if you want to re-encounter the story, some of it is it's in First Blush, which is available on DM's Guild, although because that is sold through DM's Guild, we couldn't set it in Azuria. And then things change once we get to Second Glance anyway. Another way of encountering the story is with my novel series, Age of Azuria. So if you want to read Buried Heroes, then you'll find it that way. If you don't have time to sit and read, but want to listen to a recorded podcast version, I'm not done recording it as of the recording of this video, but every week, close-ish, I record a new chapter of Buried Heroes on the World of Azuria podcast. So on your favorite podcatcher, look at World of Azuria, and the first season goes through Aurora, the prequel novella. The second season starts with Buried Heroes. So if you want to kind of encounter this story, this context that I'm about to share with you through the eyes of my character and some other people, then that's a really great way to get started. So, how I would start an adventure in Azuria, or how Jonathan started our adventures in Azuria, was you want to zero in on the PC, of course, and there are lots of different ways that a PC's adventure could begin in Azuria. But what is happening at this present moment in this magical, fantastical land is what is happening in Azuria at this time is a resurgence of the goddess Alessandra, who way, way, way back during the first age of this world, betrayed the Titan of Light and her fellow champions and rose to a position of godhood herself. as Alessandra is coming back into her own power on this one side, she is being met by a resurgence of ancient heroes. In the case of our game, as you'll read about in Buried Heroes or see in First Blush, this starts with just one champion returning. And in our game, and how I would maybe encourage you to start, would be the PC is the one who helps bring this champion back. This is where the magical amulet comes into play. It's connected to an ancient order called the Soul Shepherds, of people who tried to bring back the champions 5,000 years before in Caldara. And I know that these are a lot of different things. It's I'm sure you've experienced this as trying to set up a D&D campaign. It's hard to take so much and kind of whittle it down. The nice thing is that you don't have to know everything at the beginning, and you can add in what you need to as you go. Okay. So, Alessandra, champions. And then this is being met by the peoples of the world of Azuria. So that's kind of the context. It's been long enough ago that the champions walked the face of the material plane, or the prime plane is what we usually call it, or what I call it in the novels, that is called and known as Azuria. That most people don't remember who the champions are. They don't remember the elemental titans because they've left and sealed off their planes. And so you have in Azuria basically 3 planes: the prime plane of Azuria, the Shadowlands, and the Fey Brightlands. I just put them here. It doesn't mean that one is, I mean, it is darker. It's a shadowy realm, and that one is like, bright and happy all the time. Everywhere has their problems, right? Everywhere has its own problems. So that's what's going on kind of cosmically, where you have this resurgent goddess coming back into her own power. And it's not clear at the very beginning of the campaign what it is that she is wanting. And I'll figure out a way to have like a GM's only, with some spoilers for Age of Azuria, video on what it is that Alessandra wants. So stay tuned for that. It's so hard. I don't want to spoil the novel series for you. And I really do think that that's a great way to get to know Azuria. But if you are not a reader of epic fantasy, then we'll just hang out here. Okay, so that's what's happening cosmically. What's happening at the more individual level is, or how I would do it, would be that your PC has an item of significance that is crystalline in nature, and or something like that. Maybe it has ancient runes, it's old, that they've come into in some way, shape, or form that is important to them in their backstory. And I think that you can be as original and creative with this as you want. It doesn't have to be a really dramatic thing. It could be something that their grandmother gave them. It could be something that I wouldn't say it's something they found. I think there needs to be some sort of like, this thing found me. Kind of like Moana and the heart of Te Fiti that the ocean gave her. Something significant that is, and with their journey, it's kind of like that moment of calling, or they can look back and see how they've been called toward this adventure and this journey their whole life. This is part of that moment. This is part of that story. Okay. Somehow they then, maybe they start on a journey, I would suit this around their class. So just letting them get to know the mechanics of their character. And again, this doesn't have to be the most original thing in the world, but somehow they get started on their adventure. And with this magical special thing, they accidentally encounter, who in our game was Marcone. In First Blush, his name is Garen, and you can make this whichever element you would like it to be, and you can also make the character of this first discovered champion however you would like for them to be. But they discover and awaken this champion. And then, boom, you have your GMPC and you have your PC. And so now they have a buddy to walk around with. And in our game, Marcone at first had quite a bit of amnesia because Jonathan was still creating the world. And I was still learning how to play D&D just kind of in general. And so he didn't remember who he was or anything like that. In this case, I'm happy. I'll have another video about Kaldara, and I'm working on a novel set in Kaldara at the moment. Actually, it's called Phoenix Rising, and Marcone is one of the main characters there too. Anyway, I think that will be too much for today's video, but I'm really excited about it. So I'll make sure that you can have some more context around Kaldara soon. We started our adventure in the Kingdom of Linolynn, and that's where the Land of Vampires campaign starts, and it's around there in Caldara that I'm going to suggest this adventure starts. It's totally possible for it to be in other places. We can have another video on how you might start a campaign in Andel-ce Hevra, for instance. But for now, let's assume you're somewhere in Caldara. What is happening in Caldara is that there is, and this is at the start of the Land of Vampires campaign, the PC learns that there is a growing war, a growing conflict between Linolynn and Hadvar. They're not sure why it is that that's happening, and they, I think, actually end up leaving before they kind of fully figure out what's going on with that, although the PC is a huge catalyst in helping that. So I'm trying to figure out how to do this without there being a spoiler. On the more localized, the kingdom level in Azuria at this time, there is a declaration of war between Linolynn, which is in Kaldara on the eastern side of Azuria. It's on the western coast, right on the sea. It's a relatively new kingdom, and you can read about its founding you can read about Linolynn's founding. There's a short version, I guess, in Aurora, my novella. I'm trying to think if on my fiction blog, The Forbidden Love of Silris and Aurora, I'm trying to think if that would give you at least an overview. But anyway, Linolynn's about 1,000 years old. It's a new kingdom. Hadvar is one of the kingdoms that has survived for a long time. So there's Eldura falls. There's a huge flood. Hadvar is one of the cities that survives the flood, although it's greatly changed, and so they don't retain their old name from before. But they continue on existing. And so it's a much more powerful kingdom than Linolynn is. So there's a declaration of war between Linolynn and Hadvar, and it's not immediately clear who declared war upon whom, but that creates a lot of upheaval and confusion in the region because you have a relatively peaceful kingdom and a very powerful, wealthy kingdom planning conflict with one another where there hadn't been conflict before. And so that's what's going on at the kind of larger level in Caldara at this time. Maybe we can go ahead and talk about what's going on in the other places. So in Andel-ce Hevra, the Council of Andel-ce Hevra is made up of generals, senators, and priests, although the most powerful members of that council are the senators. And so they have been growing their empire across the continent of Tor'stre Vahn and subsuming these smaller villages as they go. And as part of that process, they've been eliminating witches, they've been eliminating druids, any practitioners of nature-based magic, and even anyone who does not subscribe to their religious belief system of the Pantheon Supreme, which is 5 deities. And so that's what's been going on in Tor'stre Vahn for the most part. Specifically with Andel-ce Hevra is a consolidation of power. There have also been roving bands of werewolves stretching across Tor'stre Vahn that's made it unsafe to live in many of the villages or the small towns. And I think depending on where the PC is and what they know, they may or may not be aware of the fact that these werewolf bands have been sent by the city and are working in conjunction with some of the senators in the city. In the Elven realms, what has been going on is a different type of consolidation. It's more of a shrinking. So there are 3 primary cities in the Elven realms. You have Inve Alinor in the south. You have Thiles Thamor in the middle. And to the north, you have... Oh my gosh, I'm so excited and nervous. I'm forgetting the name. I will remember it and I'll add it in. Sorry. Shade Rest. There it is. So the elves have been leaving the wilds of their homeland and drawing back and kind of retreating into the cities because there has been an increase in scary wild monsters, different fey creatures that they haven't seen for hundreds of years. And with this retreat, there's something similar actually going on in the Fey Brightlands of this retreat as things become more dangerous. And in some ways, with that dangerousness, they're also becoming more wild. But the part of the problem there with the retreat is that the elves are kind of shirking their duty to be connected to and part of the world around them. And so by, taking off this responsibility that they've borne for a long time, then other things are kind of swooping into this vacuum of power. So that's what's going on in the Elven realms. So that gives you several different ideas, and I think that there are lots of things to run with or use in your campaign in Azuria. But I hope that this was helpful and interesting. Any questions that you have, please leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them or to create follow-up videos. And maybe it would be helpful to have a video more specifically on bringing First Blush to Azuria or something like that. I'm not sure. So anyway, this got us started. I hope that you're excited to adventure in Azuria, and I can't wait to share more with you about this world. Okay, thanks so much.